the sound. I'm very happy to be here. I'm sorry I missed previous sessions. I was traveling. And I'm going to address what Bob just said, but I think I'm also going to address sort of many of the other fissures I know exist in this room on the issue of the future of secularism. First, let me say that I share, I'm getting a little bit of the voice of God boom here. I share Bob's hope that human beings everywhere can at some point fuse their cognitive and moral horizons and that we can actually cohere as a global civilization. In fact, I think there is no other basis for hope in the future. The question is, how are we going to do that? And it seems to me there are two very different conversations we could have. We could have a talk that's purely about strategy, uncoupled to a discussion of what's actually true and intellectually honest. Or we could talk about what's true and realize when we digress into mere discussion of political expediency and strategy, etc. I happen to think that what's true is so useful so much of the time that Bob distinguished the belief that religion is wrong from the belief that it's bad. And I think in the long run, wrong is bad. And we should be, I think most people share this intuition. But I think we need to distinguish a few things up front. We are misled, especially in the secular community, by the term religion. Religion is a word like sports. There are sports that are incredibly dangerous, that are synonymous with violence, like a sport like Thai boxing, or mixed martial arts, or football. And there are sports that by definition, entail no danger whatsoever. Badminton, lawn bowling. I mean, these two ends of the continuum have almost nothing in common except for breathing. And yet we have this one word, sports. Now, religion is a suitcase term like this. And so Bob, I think, it's not by accident that he's kind of focused on Islam in his remarks. And it's not by accident that that certainly I have tended to focus on Islam. We are not doing ourselves a service pretending that all religions are the same. I mean, beliefs matter. Specific beliefs matter. And Bob is trying to uncouple religious belief from what people actually do in the world, like blow themselves up in crowds of innocent strangers. But the people who have done this work, like Robert Pape or Scott Atran or any of the other academics who are fundamentally skeptical of the link between Islam and suicide bombing, are people who, when I talk to them, clearly express an inability to digest the fact that people actually believe what they say they believe. There are people who are certain of paradise. It's the certainty about paradise, it's the certainty that the doctrine of martyrdom is true that is what's so terrifying about Islam. Now, and I ask you, where are all of the Palestinian Christian suicide bombers? I think there probably has been one. Okay, but by and large, I mean, there are Palestinian Christians. They are Palestinian. They live in the occupied territories. They are not reliably blowing themselves up. Okay, so this is a distinction, and perhaps Bob and I will want to get into that. But in thinking about what I could say to you tonight, I was watching Richard on Bill Maher's show last night, which was an excellent appearance. And it occurred to me, what would it be like if he, at that moment, came out of the closet as a devout Muslim? Just imagine, I'm not imagining a Sokol-style hoax. I'm imagining, what if he actually had some conversion experience and was trying to justify it to all of us and to the world? What would that look like? Now, if it's true that there's no conflict between religion and science, and there's no conflict in principle between plain vanilla Islam and modernity and civil society, then he should be able to say something that wouldn't be synonymous with a plunge into psychopathology or self-deception. Now, so let's just try to think of what he could possibly say. I mean, it would really have to be good. It would have to be something that, when I heard it, knowing Richard, I would, and my admiration for him, I should be forced to say, Islam. I'll look into that. So what could it be? What could it be? Well, he could say, I've been reading the newspaper, I've been traveling, I've been seeing what it's like for people in the 21st century, and I looked around at what life is like in Pakistan and Somalia and Afghanistan, and it was just so obvious that Islam is doing so much good in the world. And I realized I had to be a part of that. And I looked at I looked at the treatment of women, and I thought, well, if ever there were a worldview that was caring for women and sedulously guarding their sexual honor, this is it. I mean, it's hard to get better than this, and this is obviously incredibly important. Or when I look at the Arab world specifically, and I read that the Arab world, that the country of Spain translates more of the world's literature and learning into Spanish every year than the entire Arab world has translated into Arabic since the 9th century. That's based on a UN report. I look at that and I think, well, that is just the perfect context in which to flourish intellectually. I mean, what could be better than that? Now, of course, he couldn't and wouldn't do this because of all of the mayhem that we notice being reliably produced by the engine of Islam at this moment in history. But the deeper reason is that's a non sequitur. I mean, even if Islam were reliably producing happy, well-adjusted, confident, intelligent, well-educated people, okay, its good effects would not for a moment suggest that its doctrine is true. So let's consider the truth. I mean, again, you have to imagine that Richard has woken up one day and believes what any real Muslim has to believe, that the Quran is the perfect word of the creator of the universe, that Muhammad is his prophet, that Muhammad received this word from the Archangel Gabriel in a cave. So what if he said to us that he finally read the book with real attention, he got an Arab translator to help him, and he noticed that, yes, in fact, it is such a good book that it could not possibly have been written by a human being. That is the claim. And he was thinking, well, I brought together a lot of very, very smart people, and we thought, well, maybe it's possible to improve this book. And we focused on the torments that await the infidel in the afterlife, which are reiterated ad nauseum in the Quran. And there's this part about where the skins of the infidel get replenished, so that your skin is burned off, but then God gives you a new skin so it can be burned again ad infinitum. And then I was thinking, well, maybe that's not the perfect punishment. Maybe that could be improved. Well, then I thought, no, actually that is the perfect punishment. The book is perfect. Okay, these are completely insane statements coming from Richard Dawkins. Okay, so now, if there were actually no conflict between religion and science, and in this case between Islam and science, there has to be some version of these statements that run through for us. What if he said, I had a deep personal experience. I was with my my friend Sam Harris, who, as we know, is sort of New Age and flaky. And he recommended that we go to a mosque and meditate. Okay, what if Richard had a really intense feeling of love and everything is right with the world? And he moved from that experience to, by golly, this doctrine must be true. It's a move that is clearly on its face illegitimate. Because Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and Christians and atheists have those experiences. The sheer fact that everyone, no matter what their dispensation, is having peak experiences proves that none of these experiences attest to the veracity of a doctrine. Okay, so this is our situation. And the uncanniness of our situation is that the only people who really can connect with the fact that people in the Muslim world really believe what they say they believe are, by and large, religious people on our side who know what it's like to believe these things. And that I find is truly frightening. My biggest fear in this area is that we're going to wake up in a world where the only people who can be trusted to know how dangerous devout Muslims are in the service of jihad and in the aspiration to build a global caliphate are our own religiously addled Christians, by and large, who are waiting for the rapture. That is not a world we can afford to live in. We have to find a path to the future that avoids that outcome. But when Bob mentioned the mosque controversy, what was so startling about this? Clearly the mosque is legal to build. It should be legal to build. Wherever you build it, you can build a church. You should be able to build a mosque. That's not the issue. The issue is that everyone who rose to the defense of this mosque, did so by denying what is patently obvious. So you have Mayor Bloomberg standing up saying Islam had nothing to do with 9/11. Islam is a religion of peace. 9/11 was as much a product of the actual tenets of Islam as the homophobia of the Christian right is a product of a vast discussion about the abomination of homosexuality that has been going on in Christianity for centuries and is directly attributable to the writings of Paul. Specific ideas have consequences. Any of you who have read Lawrence Wright's book, The Looming Tower, he talks about the people who went to Afghanistan to fight the Soviets, to fight jihad. And they used to, when one of their comrades would die in battle, first of all, they would put their encampments in completely exposed places so that they could be bombed by helicopters and thereby martyred. And when one of their comrades would die in battle, they would weep with envy. They would congratulate him and weep with envy that they weren't martyred. It seems to me that secular people and religious moderates are uniquely ill-placed to appreciate what that state of mind is like. And yet, people are attesting to this. If we will only listen, people are attesting to this, the strength of this belief system ad nauseum. And the other variables that Bob wants to invoke here, and again, specifically on Islam, economics and political oppression, don't account for this behavior. The 19 hijackers were living in Germany. They all were college educated. Most of them had PhDs. These are engineers and architects. These people, the Germans were monitoring their conversations. Their apartment was bugged for months before 9/11. all these guys talked about was paradise and the Quran and the evils of infidel culture. Read the book Perfect Soldiers. So the problem we have is that we desperately want to believe that everyone views the world the same way, and if we could just moderate our behavior, all of our enemies would disappear. It'd be so much easier to imagine that we made our enemies. There's no evidence for that, no credible evidence for that. And so whenever I hear someone on the left, and again, I am on the left on every relevant issue. I think homosexuals should be free to marry. I think taxes should go up on the wealthy. I think the war on drugs should be declared over. I am left. But when I hear people on the left talk about Osama bin Laden as though he were the Reverend Jim Jones of the Muslim world, that is a phantasmagorical degree of denial of the obvious. Osama bin Laden could be doing anything else he wants with his life. And the problem we face vis-a-vis Islam is that the version of Islam that he's teaching is really faithful to the Quran and the Hadith. I mean, you have to split hairs to see what he is distorting, if anything. Now, if he were Amish, or a Jain, or even a Buddhist, it would be absolutely obvious what he's distorting. I mean, you just couldn't make sense of his behavior in terms of his faith. So again, I think and I've sort of lost track of time here. How much time? Go ahead. I think the crucial thing we have to keep in view is that beliefs matter. Beliefs are engines of behavior and emotion. If we thought this building was on fire, we would be racing out the door. These are ideas, insofar as they're granted credence, are the stuff of which our lives are made. And the idea that we shouldn't, out of deference to this one idea that religion, as a suitcase term, is a no-go area for real honesty, I think we're paralyzed in the face of millions of people with bad ideas considered sacred. Supremely energized by them. I mean, these people, again, to speak of global jihad specifically, these people get up in the morning with a purpose. I mean, this is like being a spiritual James Bond. Talk about feeling meaning in your life. I'll leave it there.